Welcome back with another banger. It's the React Files. Hope you're having a good night. If you haven't already, please take a second
just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell,
just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So let's get straight to it.
This is the kind of thing that they train for, and they are ready to go.
That said, this is something that I think folks can plan for.
And planning is something that will be very important. Oregon's Office of Emergency Management is leading the state's coordination efforts. They estimate 1 million people could gather to watch the eclipse. Think of it like a day with football games in both Corvallis and Eugene, or maybe the Civil War.
That's obviously going to be magnified on a much bigger scale. But there's going to be people stuck in traffic. There's going to be a lot of use of cell phone networks. So we want to make sure that folks have paper maps if they're going into areas they're not familiar with, because you might not be able to rely on getting a cell signal and being able to navigate that way.
To help with the influx of people, Governor Kate Brown authorized the Oregon National Guard to deploy soldiers to help.
Anything from medical support to aviation support and fire support. Those are all missions that we're anticipating we may assist with, and we're more than happy to assist with these. We're members of the community, and we're happy to help the citizens of Oregon.
It's the kind of stuff the National Guard is prepared to handle.
In the military, we train and prepare ourselves for these types of situations where we do get to respond and put our training to use. And when we get to do this real world, it absolutely is a thrill for us. We love supporting and being able to be here in Oregon and help out.
There is also concern about fire danger. As it turns out, this is going to be the height of the wildfire season. It has been very dry throughout the summer.
So maybe a civil war. Yeah, I don't know, man. Just an eclipse. How would the phone service go out? And all the other stuff. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
So the solar eclipse is just another day. There's no danger, there's no warning, and we shouldn't panic. But yet, they have National Guards out for that day. Why would they have National Guards for the solar eclipse if it's just another day and nothing's going to happen? This solar eclipse is going to give us all kind of warning signs for things that's about to happen in the Matrix. Things are changing in its reality, and it's changing real fast. And if you really pay attention, you will notice time is actually moving faster. This reality feels like it's not even real no more. I want to be real clear, because this world actually ended in 2020. Nothing is the same if you really pay attention. This is the same reason why people are having so much air ringing out of nowhere. I know air ringing is not a new thing, but it's picking up more rapid. The reason why people are getting all these air ringings all of a sudden is because the universe is trying to talk to you. Remember, when your left ear is ringing, that is the Matrix and false downloads. When your right ear is ringing, that is your higher self in the universe. There's no difference between your ear ringing and your phone ringing. If you know how to pick your cell phone up when it's ringing, learn how to pick up your ear ringing. I hope people not sitting around waiting for the media to give them warnings and tell them what to do. It don't work like that. The media will never tell you the truth. Maybe 2 or 5%, but never the full truth. The other 95%, you got to figure it out for yourself. I keep hearing people saying it's going to be another day and nothing's going to change, nothing's going to happen. Maybe in your reality, nothing's going to happen because maybe you are a bot. Never forget, there are certain people walking around with Allah's spirit in their body. So if you get caught up arguing with these people about nothing's going to happen, then they going to win. But when people hear about the solar eclipse, they say, shit, I'm waiting for the sky to fall. And if the sky don't fall, they say nothing happened. I want to say you have no idea how the universe works if you're waiting for the sky to fall. Changes take place so small that you will never notice it. But for all the woke people, they understand that everything that happens above our heads is a higher purpose and a higher meaning. The stars only talk to the people that's spiritually activated. So if you're not spiritually activated, of course it's going to be a regular day for you.
Shout outs to Organic Like Us. So he pretty much saying there's going to be a whole bunch of spiritual downloads on the 8th during the eclipse. I could see that, definitely. But the whole, Coast Guard and military presence, I'm like, okay, what's all that for? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted.
The true location of the land of Judah, continuing my series on the possibility that biblical history happened in the Americas. Today we're going to be talking about the real location of the land of Judah. Now, what makes the tribe of Judah so important in the Bible? The tribe of Judah became the most powerful and most important tribe. Not only did it produce the great kings David and Solomon, but also it was prophesied that the Messiah would come from among its members. The kingdom of Judah was in Utah. The best-selling book When Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler has already demonstrated that Peru was Jerusalem and that the kingdom of Judah is in Utah. How did Mr. Butler prove that the kingdom of Judah was in Utah? Well, he used biblical verses from Deuteronomy chapter 34 verses 1 through 3, which reads as follows. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab onto the mountain of Nebo to the top of Pisgah, that is over Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan, and all Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah unto utmost sea, and the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, unto Zoar. The strange thing about the description of the kingdom of Judah given in Deuteronomy chapter 34 is that all these biblical place names can be found in Utah, such as Manasseh, Utah, Mount Nebo, Utah, Mount Pisgah, Utah, Jericho, Utah, South Gilead Way, Utah, Ephraim, Utah, Daniel, Utah, Nephi, Utah, short for Naphtali, Moab, Utah, and many other biblical names are found in Utah, such as Goshen, Utah, Jordan Salt Lake, which could possibly be the real Dead Sea. There is a mountain in eastern Nevada named Mount Moriah, and it's over 12,000 feet high. In Utah, not only is there a river Jordan, but it runs out of a freshwater lake and into the Great Salt Lake, which is remarkably like the Dead Sea. There is also a Mount Nebo in Utah, approximately 12,000 feet high. So yes, with evidence this strong, the real Judah was possibly in Utah. Now, people often try to say that it was the Mormons that gave these places names in Utah, biblical names to support their position as Jews. However, this explanation fails miserably because there are no 12,000 feet high mountains in modern-day Jerusalem. Therefore, the real Judah or Israel has to be in Utah because it fits the description of the kingdom of Judah perfectly.
They put that land over there in construction. Over here in the U.S., you have more pyramids over here than any place else in the world. Over there, they constructed those pyramids. They lie and say there's no equipment that can create those pyramids. Yeah, they're going to say that so you don't investigate it. But the equipment did create those pyramids. And as y'all can see, like I'm telling the truth, y'all see them constructing those pyramids. So I'm not lying about it. They constructed those pyramids.
His comment was, you should do a video on the 2024 eclipse that crosses the US in the opposite direction of the 2017 eclipse. He's talking about that X across America. He goes on to say 2024 is the year. It made a tau over the US. The tau Hebrew value is 400. Now, I was already aware of these lunar eclipses that happens in 2017 and 2024 and how they actually make an X across America. But what I hadn't thought about was how the tau or the tav has the numeric value of 400. You see over here, as we're looking at the Paleo Hebrew letters and how each of these letters have numeric value, you see the last letter in the alphabet is the tau or the taw, and it has a numeric value of 400, just like Shamar says. Of course, I had to go verify it myself, but in doing so, I see that the meaning of the letter also has significance. For you who are not familiar with the Hebrew alphabet, each of the letters has a meaning behind them, unlike the English language where letters don't mean anything at all, except give us ideas on how we're supposed to pronounce words. When you put 2 or 3 Hebrew letters together, you can actually form a sentence out of what those words actually mean. Tav and the meanings behind it, we can see how it means a mark or a sign or a cross. Some of the other meanings are ownership or to seal or covenant or to join two things together. And the last
Not only is the Most High revealing the 400-year prophecy, but he's also revealing his land, the ownership. This is a mark, a badge of distinct. X mark the spot, a mark of distinction. This is the land that the Most High gave to Abraham and his seed. I noticed there's a lot of videos of people talking about judgment coming to America, also referring to this solar eclipse in 2024 of this year in April. It's weird because they really believe that judgment is coming to a land. The Most High judge people. Understand that judgment is coming to a race of people. Remember, he did not spare his people from judgment. Remember, they was cursed. If you read the book of Deuteronomy, they was cursed. They went into slavery. And all of these terrible things happened to them. And they was sold. And they were scattered throughout the four corners. All right, he didn't hold back. That time is up now. Now it's time for all of the other nations to be judged. Your time is up. You have to read the book of Obadiah. You are going to be judged. This is coming to not just America. It's coming to the whole world because we're scattered to the four corners of the earth. All right, our people is all over the earth because we was sold or we fled, right? We was always originally here in America. And that's just facts.
Yeah, that was real interesting watching that map of the solar eclipse and the cities it's gonna hit and its path. Yeah, man. Some spooky stuff. It does have a lot of biblical named cities. I give it that. Like, wow. I know there was that many. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
Hopefully what I've found today will cement that fact. Also, a incredible find. And I have not seen anyone anywhere talk about this. So, not saying I'm correct. You can use your own opinion on that because I'm going to show you some things that are undeniable about the United States. So let's get to it. So this is California as we know it today. We got the valley right through here. It's where a lot of the vineyards are. A lot of the Silicon Valley is right up in here where San Francisco is. But let me show you an ancient map. I think this is from the 1700s, where it shows California as an island. And a lot of people in the mudflood community has referenced this in several maps like this. But I want to point something out because I heard something today on Unexpected Cosmology, and I have his playlist on the Millennial Age plus Mudflood in my playlist. So you can go straight to his channel and watch those. They're pretty long videos. But I will not share anybody's videos that don't have supporting evidence, and he's by far has the most supporting evidence that I've found thus far. But I have mentioned in the past that I thought that the Mississippi River was actually the Nile, and that down towards the Gulf of Mexico, there, could be the original Garden of Eden. And hang on just a second. Let me look something else up right quick here. So this came out on March 4th, and I've been holding a lot of this info back for a long time because I just hadn't had the supporting evidence up until my wife showed me this a few days ago, well, about a week and a half ago, actually. But off the coast of St. Bernard, which is about 50 miles east of New Orleans, this guy claims that he had found a 12,000-year-old city. And he said he discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization off the coast of St. Bernard Parish. He claims there's a huge underwater granite mounds near the Chandelier Islands that may have been the site of a lost city. The Chandelier Islands are a chain of uninhabited barrier islands located in the Gulf of Mexico, 50 miles east of New Orleans, and it's actually just off the coast of Mississippi. But he said before a dramatic sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age, which is not the case, but anyway, he said he's a retired architect. retired architect, and he believes the site to be predating the Maya, Inca, and Aztec civilizations in Mexico. What's down there are hundreds of buildings that are covered with sand and silt that are geographically related to the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he continues on and said he's seen under like 200 foot of silt, just watery dirt, that there is actually 3 pyramids in the same configuration as the pyramids of Giza, along with many, many buildings of these megalithic granite, blocks. But right here is when it was an island. And as you can see right here, it's called the Gulf of California, or the Red Sea. And today on The Unexpected Cosmology, he was talking about how a woman had sent him a letter saying that she believed that this island was actually Egypt, and that the Red Sea right here is what God parted when he had the Exodus and when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. So I got to wondering, there's quite a few things over here in California. This is an ancient map from Texas history of Jerusalem, Texas. And you see how this thing is laid out. It looks a lot like that city of Jerusalem. This is actually another picture of Jerusalem. And you can see how this thing's shaped. It's got the walled city all the way around it, the temple complex right here in the middle. But this Jerusalem, Texas one, you can see there's a temple complex right here, walls all the way around. But what's really curious to me is this one is of Jerusalem. Right down here in the bottom it says Mount Calvary, and you see it's got the depiction of the 3 crosses. But let me go back to this one, because this is the one from Texas history. And you see right down here in this bottom corner, it's got the 3 crosses as well. But down here, Calvaria Locus. And that translation, look, this is Latin right here. This right here is Latin, and here it is in English. They came to a place called Golgotha, that is to say the place of the skull. So Calvaria Locus means the place of the skull. This is unbelievable. And then
the Mississippi River system. Now, let's go back to the word. It says in verse 15 that God take his hand with a mighty wind and lift his hand over the river and shall smite him into 7 streams. Okay? Look at this map here. This is the Mississippi River going into the Gulf. Let's count how many streams spawns from this. Missouri, 1. Arkansas, 2. Red, 3. Atchafalaya, 4. Tennessee, 5. Ohio, 6. Illinois, 7. Is that a coincidence? I do not think so. This is the Nile River. They're hiding the information. Now let's confirm it. We're going to go into the secret books that the secret societies read from. And that is indeed the Freemason Society. There are certain levels that give away certain information. And this is where all of your senators and congressmen, this is where they go to get that information. They're not going to get it from universities. The only other way they're going to get it is by continuously searching within the chancellor's libraries, who are the guardians at the universities and state colleges. That's where the information is. So let's go down to page 25. Let's start reading here. The ancient and mystic Oriental right is universal and is open to every master mason who believes in the fatherhood of God and the universal brotherhood of all men. The other qualification necessary of the neophyte. Remember Neo from the Matrix. The neophyte is that he shall be honorable and upright in his dealings. Number 4, the cradle of the symbolism used in all masonry is placed by many of the best authorities in that country, which they believe was first inhabited, the plateau of Tartary. Tartary, the empire of Tartaria, is something that we are going to get into much later, but actually sooner than later. This is going to be a big one. This is where the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes of Israel, are housed. And from there, transmitted to this generation by the sages of India, Persia, Ethiopia, and Egypt. We are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America. It is fact that at Memphis, Egypt, in the pyramids, under the guidance of the kings and the mystic rites of masonry, were worked many thousands of years ago, but at that time, Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same. Number 6, in America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th. Do you see that? Rediscovered after Pangea and the catastrophe that you read about in the book of Ezekiel in the 15th century. And
that was definitely hidden knowledge. It started to get deep. Yeah, I went down that rabbit hole. But bro, interesting stuff. Shout outs to 6 Ritual Sins for getting this information out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below.
So there's this myth that AIPAC pays congresspeople and senators, and that's not actually true. I'm about to show you how these political donations actually work and why they matter. By now, we probably all know what AIPAC is, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. All of our presidents sure know what AIPAC is. And there's this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that they pay all of our politicians in order for them to support Israel, but they don't pay our politicians. See, when you look up who received the most pro-Israel money in the last election cycle, this is not money going into their pockets. This money is going to their campaigns. And that's how they get elected. Once they're elected, they do other things to get rich, not to mention the political influence, prestige, connections that come with the positions. But when you actually look at who's receiving the most money and why they're receiving the most money, it's way more interesting. And just so all the censors know, I condemn anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and I'm only going to use very, very mainstream sources like Wikipedia, like Israeli news sources, and mainstream news journalism. None of this is controversial. This is all very public information. So in 2022, the top receiver of pro-Israel money in the House of Representatives was this woman named Chantel Brown, and she received over $1 million of campaign contributions. Why? See, most of you have probably never heard of this woman, and she's definitely not Jewish. But the key factor is that she only won by a narrow margin, and she was running against Nina Turner. And this was a very important seat for AIPAC and the Israel lobby. See, if we go to the ADL, they have a list of radical anti-Israel candidates in the 2022 primaries. And there's only like 6 people on the list, and one of them is Nina Turner, who has spoken out against Israel lobbying money. And she was a serious contender to win this congressional seat. Hence why this obscure politician you've never heard of received over $1 million of pro-Israel money. And looking at who they don't give money to is also really interesting, because on this list of really anti-Israel candidates, there's all these other people: Marco Amaral, Stephanie Gallardo, Max School, Rashida Tlaib. These first 3, their opponents didn't receive any Israel money. And that's because they had no chance of winning. Marco got 8.7% of the vote. Stephanie got 15.9% of the vote. And when you search for their opponents that beat them, they didn't receive any donations because there was no need. Obviously, when I talk about the reasons for these things, that's just me applying my speculation. The only facts I'm claiming are facts are what are in the sources that are very mainstream that I'm showing behind myself. The rest is just purely my opinion, freedom of speech. But there's a lot of other interesting dynamics that we can learn from this list too. Like if you look at Haley Stevens, the second highest recipient, that would be this lady, and she's not Jewish either, but she's very pro-Israel. And it just so happens that she was actually running against Andy Levin, who is Jewish and is also obviously very pro-Israel. And he's also one of the top receivers of money. So this Michigan seat, they had locked down. I don't know the exact dynamics of why, but they were backing both horses in that race. So next, Elaine Luria. Elaine is super Jewish, her whole family, tons of Jewish history. And she has historically been running very close races against this guy named Scott Taylor. 51%, 51%. So that was a big deal. But then this year, not against Scott Taylor, she was running against this woman, Jen Kiggins. And she actually lost, despite receiving $723,000 of campaign donations. And although she's super Jewish, it's not a huge deal because Jen Kiggins is also very pro-Israel. So I guess they'll take the L on that one. This picture becomes even more clear when you look at the three most critical voices in the House of Representatives against Israel is Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. Sorry if I mispronounced all of your names. And the Israel lobby didn't give their opponents any money, even though they are extremely outspoken against Israel. Rashida Tlaib is actually Palestinian. But in all three cases, they win by large margins, like 69%, 68%. I can't quite read that small. Like, they're not at risk of getting unseated by their opponents. And so when you look up their opponents, none of them received any money because they figured no point in even trying. Next recipient, Josh Gottheimer. Same story. He's Jewish and he was running a really close race and they wanted him to win. And now is where we get to the other part of the picture with Hakeem Jeffries, who received $439,000 in 2022. He is not Jewish, and he was at no risk of losing the race, 72%, but he's super pro-Israel. They paid for a trip to Israel for him. He's been called one of the most pro-Israel Democrats in the House. He said, quote, "Back home in New York City, we consider Jerusalem to be the sixth borough." And in the last election cycle, 2020, they didn't really care. They only gave him $36,000. Versus this election cycle, $439,000. That's like more than 10 times as much money. And it's probably because in the 2022 election cycle, he became the House Democratic leader. That's a lot of influence. Probably a pretty solid investment. Next is Andy Levin, who we already talked about, Michigan double-double. And then we have Richie Torres. This one's really interesting. And this is the last one we'll do. See, Richie Torres is just a dude. He's actually one of the only congressmen who didn't go to college. But he is super pro-Israel. He's been called the House's loudest Israel supporter. And he was part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is like the furthest left-leaning faction of the Democratic Party. But he left the caucus because of their stance on the Israel-Hamas war. We'll call it a war. And you know who else is on that caucus? Our three homies. So this is an opportunity for pro-Israel groups to get a voice that is very pro-Israel in this far left sort of enclave that is sort of against Israel. So all that money is a way for them to pick off a person in the sort of enemy camp. And I mean, it's pretty obvious why AIPAC would be investing in getting pro-Israeli politicians into the government, because we send them money every year and we are one of the most important pieces of support in order to keep Israel in the position it is in internationally. But here's the kicker. This is a cool graph you've probably not seen. What's the overall impact of AIPAC? Well, here's a chart, and it's straight from Wikipedia, mainstream sources, and it's a timeline of the number of U.S. senators that are Jewish over time. And this is back in like the 1800s, there's the 1900s, you know, there's only like 2% of the American population that are Jewish, right? So groovy, that makes sense. There's 100 Senate seats, 1 or 2, cool. But then what happened in 1948 that changed all of that? Again, from Wikipedia, now we have 9 out of 100 senators are Jewish. That is 9%. And 6% of the House of Representatives versus 2.4% of the population. And see, receiving the Israel money is not how you get rich. It's how you get on the team. And if you don't support the team, they can just as easily as they got you your seat, they can just as easily give the next person your seat and get you off the team. And if you don't have your seat, then how are you going to use your seat to become really, really rich? And trading on insider information is not the only way that Congress people get rich, but it's probably the most obvious way. This is the average of the overall stock market returns in 2023, 25% returns, good year. Congress members were making 240% returns. Holy shit. Brian's making Nancy Pelosi look like a fucking amateur. So anyways, I hope that clears up all these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It's totally just misinformation to say that AIPAC is making politicians rich and paying them money. It's not bribes. They're not paying them money. They're just helping to support democratic ideals. I mean, obviously, AIPAC's interests are America's interests. So it's a good thing that they can, influence who gets all of our political influence. And a great example of that is how all of our politicians voted to ban this Chinese app that we're all using to spread misinformation, because it's in America's best interest, in their best interest, to stop the Chinese from influencing what Americans think. Because if the Chinese could influence what Americans think, then the Chinese could influence who holds all the seats. And that would be really anti-democratic if another country could influence which American politicians were in charge. Right?
I think we all agree that would be a crazy scenario for entertainment purposes only, YouTube. But yeah, shout outs to Cancel This Clothing Company. Right? Great informational, educational style video. But yeah, that scenario would be crazy. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
So another way to see that this flat earth plane is ruled by Saturn, Chronos Father Time, is by the worship of the black cube. The black cube represents Saturn. Of course, I went over this before, but just a refresher. Of course, you have the magic box of Saturn where each direction equals 15, and of course that's 666, 15, 15, 15. You have the Star of David that represents the black cube, and we've seen this representation all throughout society. Of course, you have the Sega Saturn, also known as Sega Genesis creation story. One of the latest being quantum computing by IBM being a black box. Most people have probably seen the Saturn car company. And those are just a few examples. And side note, Israel just means Saturn. Not only do they have the Star of David that represents Saturn, but the name is Ra-El. We already went over what Ra represents. El, the god of Israel. And you can see here the children of El. Ashtar, like Easter, April. And April is the real beginning of spring, the real new year. Just take a look at the other ones like Yahweh, Dagon. We went over these. And the Greek equivalent for El is Chronos. Like Saturn, Father Time. Israel. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with a few verses from the book of Enoch. And I'm not going to decipher these verses. You're going to decipher them. With everything that we've been going over so far, I know that you guys be able to look at these verses and decipher them. And feel free to put your interpretations in the comments. I love reading them. And one more thing about NPC, since there was a request. You can pause to read just in case you need a little bit more info on that. Alright, so pause to read these verses in the book of Enoch. Pause to read more. This is the place of the end of heaven and earth. This is the prison for the stars of the heaven and the host of heaven. Bars. Really read between the lines here. Chapter 6 verse 2. When it's talking about the sons of heaven, that's a reference to the Nephilim. Here's some more for you. Pause to read. I saw the cornerstone of the earth, and I saw the four winds which support the earth and the sky. Pause to read more. Pause to read more. And I saw a place there beyond the great earth. There the waters gathered, just like the vortex at the North Pole. Pause to read more. And some more. I saw the ends of the earth on which heaven rests, and the open gates of heaven. I can't wait to read your interpretations. Pause to read this. Here's some more for you. Here's a little more for you. Some more. Pause to read. And I saw how the stars of heaven come out, and counted the gates of which they come. And this is just a Genesis verse about the Nephilim. So when the people go and praise Saturn, the people act like the rings. And a lot of people are unknowingly worshiping Canaan and Baal, or like Cain and Abel. Alright peeps, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and follow for more. I love you. Peace.
Shout outs to Astro 5D. I mean, he got straight to the point, was precise in what he was saying, man. Like, whoa, eye-opening. Definitely got to go back and pause, read, pause. For real, that was a lot in a short amount of time. To be honest, I wasn't expecting all of that. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
That star is talking about Saturn. As a matter of fact, when you look at the word Israel, a lot of you noticed already, it's just a breakdown of Isis, which would be the moon, Ra, which would be the sun, and El, which would be Saturn, just another name for Saturn. So Israel is just the worship of all three of these things. When we look at Islam, the crescent moon and the star, that's the moon and that is Saturn. It's the worship of Saturn. It all goes back. So now when we look in the Bible, when it's talking about people worshiping false idols, they're basically talking about themselves, because they were the ones worshiping false idols. But these false idols, when you go through the research and look at some of them, they're talking about either the sun, the moon, or Saturn. So now Acts 7:43, it says, "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Remphian, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." So now first, who is Moloch? Moloch is a giant bull god. He is the god of material, the god of evil. They used to sacrifice, as you can see in the depiction, used to sacrifice to this bull god Moloch. Now let's go back to Acts 7:43 in the Bible, when it's talking about the worship of Remphian. When you translate this word, it means Saturn. When you look at the Coptic Bible, the word still translates to Saturn. So here we have the Bible talking about the worship of Saturn, and it's disguised as a different word, Remphian. You got to do research. Now, when we go to Islam, we can see it plain as day, the worship of Saturn. Saturn is called the dark sun, or the black square, or the black sun and the dark square, any way you want to put it. But we can see here what's going on. They are basically worshiping Saturn. That's the cube. Now we know at the top of Saturn is a hexagram, and from that hexagram we can get the cube or the square. Now they are walking around the square, symbolizing the storm that is going around the hexagram or the square of Saturn. Now, do they realize what they are doing? No, because Islam tells you not to do any research and not to basically try to prove your religion true. You have to basically have faith. But truth is truth, and obviously the religion is not based on truth. So now when we start looking at Islam, when we start looking at the logo or the symbol they have there of the crescent moon and the star. Now when you start doing research on moon mythology, you find out about Al-Elah. Now Al-Elah was a moon god. All they did was basically shorten the name to Allah. Now Al-Elah had three daughters, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. They were moon goddesses. Now you'll also find the worship of Hubble. Hubble was always depicted with the moon, the crescent moon. You'll also find Baal or Baal, always depicted with the moon and the star. Looks exactly like the Islamic symbol or the Islamic logo. Now also we can find Baal in the Bible, and he is always associated or usually associated with Satan in some way. So now when we start looking at these symbolism, when we start seeing the crescent moon and the star, we can find it so many places, so many civilizations way back in ancient times worshiped and used this logo, the crescent moon and the star. Now, a lot of Muslims will look at this and they'll say, well, they just worship the same God or worship Allah, but by different names. But they don't realize that this was the worship of the moon. It had nothing to do with Islam and their religion. It was the worship of the moon. So now when we look at Judaism, when we go and we start researching the Old Testament, when we start looking at these characters, they all resemble Greek mythological figures. When we look at Eve, we have Pandora. When we look at the whole Noah's Ark story, we have Deucalion and Pharaoh. When we look at Samson, we have Hercules. When we look at God or Jesus, we have Zeus. It's the same. It's all Greek mythology. And we know 1000 BCE. We're talking about Homer wrote about these things 1000 BCE or further back, and we cannot find any Greek writings. You can't find any Hebrew writings anywhere that predates 1000 BCE that's talking about, Noah and talking about Moses and talking about what's in the Torah. You can't find anything that predates Homer's Odyssey or the Iliad. You can't find anything. So they got these things from Greek mythology, plain and simple. Now, you have to realize Greek mythology, the Old Testament, Judaism is Greek mythology. Greek mythology is basically hiding and trying to cover up the fact that these people worship Saturn. They worship Kronos. So Judaism is the worship of Saturn. Christianity, the worship of Saturn. Islam, the worship of Saturn. Plain and simple. And what does Saturn correspond with? Satan. So you're talking about all three of these major modern religion is in essence worshiping Satan, worshiping Saturn, and a lot of people don't realize.
Shout outs to VBE Studio Woke Talk. Sharing that one. And that was a whole lot of parallels. I mean, he reminds me of Billy Carson in a sense, They along the same tempo of how they flow. But yeah, man, it's eye-opening for sure. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
My name is Drake Bell, and I came here today to tell my story.
Have you ever told your story publicly before?
I have never told my story publicly. No.
Dialogue coach Brian Peck is arrested.
We were still in shock of the announcement that Brian will no longer be working with us. We're like, what happened?
And when this is announced, it is said that these charges are related to a child actor.
It certainly has all of the ingredients for a huge scandal, but it wasn't.
Drake would be in the dressing room or something, and in would pop Brian and just touch Drake. Do things that, wait a second, what are you doing? Drake can put that on himself. And the thing is, this is in front of people. Then he'd maybe walk over to Drake and be feeding him some lines or whatever and put his arm around his waist, put his hand up on his shoulder and kind of run it down his arm and things like that.
Leo, as you know, is the latest, hottest, hunkiest teen idol there is.
Yeah, his muscles.
I saw this video of Brian Peck on Growing Pains with Leonardo DiCaprio, grabbing his shoulder, running across him and going down his arm. That's the kind of behavior I saw him with my son. Same frickin' behavior. So I went to production and said, I really am very uncomfortable with this guy, Brian Peck, always being around my son. I go, I don't see anything abnormal, but it just doesn't, I don't have a good feeling. And she goes, oh, well, I don't know if you knew it or not, but he's gay. Maybe you're just homophobic and you just don't understand that he's a touchy-feely guy. So I said, okay. And then it just kept not setting well with me.
In hindsight, I should have been able to see, but as a kid, you have no clue. But my dad saw it a mile away.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Talk about creeped out. I remember growing up watching Growing Pains. But man, that's crazy. Leonardo DiCaprio, they just showed it like, whoa, bro. Wow. The gaslighting they did to his father.
I was sleeping on the couch where I would usually sleep, and I woke up to him. I opened my eyes, I woke up, and he was shock and had no idea what to do or how to react. You know, he's so apologetic. Oh, this will never happen again. I'm so sorry. You know, that I don't know what got into me, and I crossed the line, and this will never happen again. And well, he figured out how to convince my mom and everyone around to have me, you know, anytime I would have an audition or anytime I needed to work on dialogue or anything, I somehow ended up back at Brian's house. I really don't know how to elaborate on that on camera, really. Why don't you think of the worst stuff that someone could do to somebody as a and that'll answer your question. I don't know how else to put it. It was not a one-time thing. It was not a oops. No, it is, I mean,
Yeah, that's Drake Bell. You could tell it was really hard for him to talk about it. It's rough. Took a lot of courage. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.
Pickle Boy was this, like, character that returned again and again and again throughout the seasons of all that.
Pickle Boy likes to hurt and tease pickles.
Hello? Anyone? I gotta get something to eat. A pickle.
We just went with it. Pickles? Look, this is the mind of Dan Schneider. You gotta ask him.
There was this referencing to, like, oh yeah, Dan just has a weird sense of humor.
That was like, pickles don't look like penises to
you? This is a children's television show. Wait, why is this in the show? What is the joke here exactly? There's this weird element of, like, they all were able to, like, pull a fast one and get away with it. And that's like a part of the joke.
Brian Peck worked closely with Dan as this dialogue coach, and Brian is seen as this guy on set who's just helping with the kids. He's very much one of the cogs in the Dan Schneider machine.
I'll see you in hell.
Brian first connected with Dan's world playing small roles in Good Burger and Kenan and Kel.
Let's get these balls a bouncing.
And there are these behind-the-scenes clips where you see Brian Peck joking around on set.
I'm not just Pickle Boy, but I'm also a trained professional who works here on the set of all that. You can tell by my very important looking headset. I'm sorry, hang on. Yeah, do you want fries with that?
Everybody loved Brian. He was charming, he was clever.
But there are moments where Brian joking around on set feels a little bit off.
Yo, what's crazy is that I remember that shit. And even back then I was like, yo, this dude is weird. And two, I don't even eat pickles. I'm not a pickle guy at all. I take them off my burgers. So it's extra weirding me out. But to see this now, it's like, yo, what the heck?
What if I told you that all corporations are actually just one giant mega corporation? And I'm not talking about metaphorically. And I'm not talking about BlackRock. I'm talking about what's really behind BlackRock. See, we hit 1 million followers on TikTok this week, and I've been waiting to post this video since the very first video that I made, laying the groundwork of understanding so that we're all gonna understand this now that we're here. So let's break it down real simple. If you're gonna go grocery shopping at a corporate grocery store, all of these corporations are owned by these institutions. They're highlighted in red if they're on all 4 of these sheets. They're darker orange if they're on 3 of them, and light orange if they're on 2. And there's only a couple that only appear once. It's mostly the same money. But we go deeper. If you go for the biggest tech companies, it's basically the exact same list for all four of these. That would be Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, Geode, which is similar to Fidelity Associated, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. And then Northern Trust is on 3 of them, and Capital World Investors is the exact same thing as Capital Research and Management Company. So you might think, okay, these are the institutions that own the whole stock market, but who owns them? And see, if you've been around here for a minute, you already know. They all own each other. Just a giant cross ownership pool. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because see, way back before I'd even posted a single video, I was sitting in my office reading this report from an anonymous user on Reddit. And he had noticed the exact same thing that I'm talking about right now. And he wrote a program to put all that data into a visualization so we can see who owns who. And I'm about to show you what he figured out. Let's take BlackRock, for example. This is a list of the top institutional owners of BlackRock and how much of the company they own. And if you visualize it, it looks like this, where the whole square is all of BlackRock's stock, and they get a percentage of that square based on how much they own. And the important colors to note are that white symbolizes us, retail investors, and gray symbolizes insiders that work at the company. So that would be like Larry Fink's stock, among other people. And everything else is other giant corporations, investment banks. Like BlackRock themselves own a little bit. State Street owns some. Capital World Management owns some. Bank of America owns some. You see how this works? But then you think about it and you're like, well, wait a minute, because all of these institutions are owned by other institutions, right? So what if we put that data in here? Well, he did. And it looks like this. And you realize that all of this that was owned by Merrill Lynch is actually owned by all of these other institutions. And a little bit of us, retail, up there at the top. But here, we've only replaced Merrill Lynch's section. What about all of these guys? Well, then it looks like this. Remember, white is retail investors like you and me, and everything else is giant mega corporations. And if you go one layer deeper, filling in all those corporations with their corporations, you see how this program's working? And so then we simplify it to just black, gray, and white. And this is who owns BlackRock. White is retail investors like you and me. Gray is insiders at all of these corporations like CEOs and other executives. And black is just corporations owning each other. We'll call it Megacorp. This is the same process done for Bank of America and for State Street and for Best Buy, Amazon, Macy's. Groceries, food, ingredients, building and selling homes, even less white, meaning us, retail ownership. As far as I can tell, there's only one company on the entire stock market that is not owned by Megacorp. Can you guess who it is? Do you know? It's GameStop. Except that this photo's out of date because it's from a few years ago. It probably looks more like this if you believe the public info, which is a big if. But more on that another time. This is not a video about GameStop. This is about Megacorp. Because see, when all of the owners own each other, all of their interests are aligned. BlackRock wants State Street to do well because State Street wants BlackRock to do well because they both own each other. So who is the real final boss behind all the money? Well, isn't that the $1 million question? And ever since I've been asking those more important questions, my follower growth went from this to this. So you're not going to find those answers on this channel. You're going to have to go follow me in other places. All I'll say for now is that the next time you buy a product from a corporation like Nike or Costco or Best Buy or Amazon or any of these corporations, you're buying it from the mega corporation. They're all owned by the same big money. And it's all one big siphon, just vacuuming money out of our pockets up to the people on top. We'll make another video about how exactly they do that shortly. For now, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that is here and here and here. Your support means the world to me, and it allows me to do this work to help support small businesses and help look for like the truth of what the heck's going on in this world. For all you guys that have been here since the beginning, you are legends. I notice you in the comments. I see you. I appreciate you, even if I don't get to as many comments and as many DMs as I used to. For all the people that have helped me do the digging, that have given me tips, that have collaborated along the way, I love you. You're amazing. Please never stop being curious. Do your own research. Don't trust the government, and get ready for a lot of censorship in 2024. So the very first video I ever posted on my page back in May of last year was about who owns everything. It only took us 8 months, a couple hundred videos, and 1 million followers to get right back to the exact same question. Who owns everything.
And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed tonight's rabbit hole. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to Vianney and the Woke NGA out of New Zealand. I appreciate your support. If you haven't already, please take a second just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So what we gonna do, y'all? That's right. Run these numbers up. Thanks again. Until next time.